But no, I'm very, very excited to chat. This has been I've been looking forward to this. I'm just like, this will be fun because I really like your presence on Instagram, and I've been listening to your podcast a little bit. I'm like, this is gonna be a good one. This is gonna be fun.
Yay! Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah. Yeah, but okay, it looks like we're live everywhere now. So, welcome everyone. If you're watching the replay, if you're here with us live, hello. And if you have any questions, even if you're watching the replay and you're like, I do have a question, but you're already gone, leave it in the comments. We always like to come back and answer those. But yeah, Emily Jane, I guess I feel like I can call you M just because of like how
Yeah,
how long I've been following you and everything. So M, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you here.
thank you. Yeah, I tend to go by anyway. I only really use my full name for formal introductions, but I'm excited to be here and I'm glad that you've been loving consuming all the content that I put out there.
Yeah, I definitely am. Which like aligns perfectly with what we're talking about
Mm.
today with like branding and like creating that magnetic marketing, because I'm just like,
Mm.
all the reels that you post, I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna watch this whole thing, and scrolling through like the carousels of texts and all that. Not it's I don't know. I feel like it's difficult for some people, or at least some people's carousel posts that they post. I do not scroll all the way through, so it's hard to like hone in someone's attention. So I'm excited to like
Mm.
dive into that and talk about branding and creating a brand and like
Mm.
creating that magnetic marketing.
Yeah.
But yeah, could you give us a little background into you and like what you do, where you're based, and all that?
Yeah, so I'm based in Australia on the Gold Coast. If anyone's ever been here, that's my neck of the woods. But really, my journey in business started when I was 22 years old. I was studying my Masters of Architecture at the time, and I was only 6 months away from actually finishing that degree. I was also working a job in an architecture firm around my studies as well. So I was really deeply in that path of climbing the corporate ladder and following that journey that I had set out for myself after graduating school. And I just reached a point, coincidentally, it also was during COVID lockdowns where I reached this point. But I just found this like deep conflict going on within me where my head was saying, finish the next 6 months of the degree, get the piece of paper, and then decide what you want to do from there. But my heart was pulling me into the direction of starting something else. And so the Empower Them podcast was a passion project of mine at that time, but it was what I was really being pulled to explore the potential of. And so I made the decision to drop out of my master's degree, quit my job, and just go all in on building a business around my podcast. And within just 8 months of doing so, I hit my very first six figures, which for me was the confirmation that I needed, that that was the path that I was meant to be on. And then that opened the doors for me over the last 3, 4 years to really just evolve into the brand artist that I am today.
That is a crazy story. Like I'm thinking of myself at 22, and like if I was like 6 months away from finishing school, I would have been like, well, I have to do this. I have to finish this. But like that's really cool that you were like, you know what? No, my heart's pulling me this way. And knowing even at that age, because I feel like I'm 30 something, 36, 37 now.
Yeah.
And uh and like now I know a lot more things that I look back at 22. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I knew nothing. But like that's so great that you had that presence of mind to be like,
Mhm.
my heart's pulling me this direction. I feel like this is something I really need to follow, instead of just kind of falling in line with maybe expectations of other people or
Mhm.
just like the norm, and being like, oh, well, I'm going to finish this master's and I'm going to,
Yeah.
become an architect or whatever. And just go into that. But yeah, no, that's very cool. Was it like, were you just like hustling those first 8 months to get that 100,000.
Yeah, I mean, before I go into that, I want to mention something that you brought up as well. There was a lot of layers that were playing out for me when I was making that decision to leave. And some of the biggest things that came up for me was like, on one hand, the emotions that I was experiencing were like, if I amplified them and if I future paced 6 months and I asked myself, will like what state will I be in if I continue to allow myself to stay in this state? It did not look pretty. Like I was being forced on an emotional, mental, physical level to really reassess the direction that I was going in. And then on another level, I also weighed up the options of like, well, if I already felt this pull to start a business, 6 months is a long time to put that on hold. What if I could actually use those 6 months to get me ahead? Where would I be? And so I was really weighing up the cost of not taking action, the cost of staying in my degree and staying in my job, the cost of not quitting that to start the business. And I think a lot of people forget to weigh up that cost of inaction because they're
Yeah.
so focused on their fears, but they're not paying attention to, well, what are the potential fears that will come to life if you don't make any change at all. So I just wanted to add that piece in there. But on the second piece that you were asking around that first 6 to 8 months for me, I hustled. I really, really hustled. And there were big lessons that came from that because the way that I built to my first six figures is definitely not the way that I then built to my second six figures because I sacrificed everything. I
Mhm.
sacrificed all my time. I sacrificed my health. I sacrificed, my friendships. I didn't see my friends for pretty much the whole 8 months,
Oh, yeah.
And so I was sacrificing a lot of my values in pursuit of this goal. And that led me to burning out. That led me to reaching that first 100,000 and literally like crying, not happy tears, like crying because I felt like I was back in the same position I was in when I was studying my degree and working the job. And so the lesson in that for me was I was allowing my need to succeed to be driven by my need to prove myself and to be driven by my desire to, validate my worth and validate that I'm on the right path by just focusing on speed instead of sustainability. And so the biggest lesson in that was you don't want just speed. You want
Yeah.
speed with sustainability in business. And I had speed, no sustainability, and that led to crashing and burning out and then needing to go through a big healing journey and rebuilding journey in my second year to basically change the entire way that I was functioning within my business.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something that I see a lot for a lot of people, and, like, for myself in my
Mhm.
business, I, like, worked, like, in my 9 to 5 job for about 2 years while I was building my photography business, and then once I quit, I just, like, went full steam, and I was just hustling and trying to bring in as much work as I could, and, made it to where I was able to, like, match my 9 to 5 pay. But it also got me to burnout,
Mm,
just like you were saying, because I didn't have systems and I didn't have sustainability and I didn't have workflows set out. It was just, I don't know. I'm just, people are going to pay me. I'm going to get out in front of other people and then they're going to pay me, and
yeah.
just trying to keep up and working till late in the nights.
Mm,
Uh, and that's not the life that we dream of whenever we're like, oh, I'm gonna start my own business. Like
mm,
whenever you were in your master's degree, whenever you were talking about that, like weighing both sides, uh, that wasn't what you were dreaming of like, oh, I want
mm.
to, end this school, start my own business, get completely run dry to where it's just like, mental breakdown kind of space. And I think we force ourselves to get there by
Mm,
not having those systems and workflows and everything. So
yeah.
um, yeah, and I did want to say, like you were talking about, like weighing, like should I leave my job or should I leave school and start this thing? And you mentioned this, and I just really want to say this again for the listeners because this is something that I'm still trying to work on myself.
Mm,
Is not just weighing the fears of, well, if I make this leap, these are the things that could go wrong. So is it better that I stay here than these things go wrong and the fears come up? But instead, like weighing the fears against the fears, like, what if I stay here? What is that going to look like? And what is that going to keep me from? And what am I going to miss out on if I stay here and don't take whatever leap you're needing to take? So
Mhm.
yeah, I love that. I love that we've just like just diving right into this. This is so good. Um, but yeah, like I know we're gonna talk about like branding and all of that.
Mm.
And having like a magnetic brand and just kind of what that means and all of that. But kind of before we get there, what does it mean to like what are some signs that you maybe don't have a magnetic brand?
Mhm. I mean, some of the most simple signs is you're not really making any money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't have a community that's actively building, you're not getting that feedback, like, that engagement on the content that you're putting out there, you're not getting any feedback in the DMs from community members saying that what you're sharing is resonating and landing for them, your profile's not growing, you're not signing any clients, you're feeling as a big one comes down to the feeling as well, like, if marketing and content and branding feels like a big push and you just struggle to feel that creative inspiration, that's a very, very big sign that you
Mhm.
lack that magnetism. Because when you do experience that magnetism, creativity flows, content flows, and you can actually feel that shift, right? Because and when we talk about magnetism, we're talking about an energetic connection that's happening where the
Yeah.
person on the other side of the screen feels your energy, resonates with your energy, and goes, I need that, or I'm aligned with that. And so that connection starts with what you're feeling within yourself as well. So, if we put all the clients and the engagement and all of that aside, and you just put
Yeah.
it down to one thing, tuning into how you're feeling when you're creating.
Yeah. No, oh, that's so good. Like it absolutely starts with ourselves.
Mhm.
Because, whenever we're misaligned or if we're we don't know what we're doing and we're just like, I don't know. Like those first couple of years for me when I was hustling and just like my
Mm.
marketing was just like throwing everything out there. Just
Yeah.
whatever can bring in eyes, that's it. I just need
Mm.
people to know that I'm here. And there was no consistency. There was no real brand. It was just I'm a photographer and I can take your photos. That's
Yeah.
about it. Which there are thousands of those people.
Yeah, it's something
Yeah.
that you said there too before we move forward. You said you
Mhm.
were just throwing out anything that would capture attention and bring eyes to your page. And
Yeah.
this is something that I see, which is a growing problem within the online space, particularly on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, where people are performing. They're creating based off what they think is going to capture attention. And sometimes what that ends up meaning is the content that you're creating and what you're throwing out there to try to capture attention isn't actually truly you, truly aligned with your brand, with your mission, but you're putting on a performance to try to get views, to try to get likes, to try to get eyes on you. And so what's really important when it comes to tapping into your magnetism is ensuring that what you're sharing isn't a performance. You're not faking something or acting something out just to try to get clickbait or attention, but instead that you're creating from a place of embodiment of what it is that you're ultimately doing and sharing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did that too where it was, I don't know, a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, that I was really I'm a wedding photographer and I was really leaning into like high
Mm.
end luxury. And I was like, I, John, not high end. I am
Yeah.
not luxury. like, I'm walking around in, sneakers or Chuck Taylors and
Mm.
just like, playing old video games and drinking coffee. And like, I'm not walking around in Louis Vuitton and
Mm.
going out on yachts and stuff. But I was trying to like I don't know, almost like put on a persona of
Mm.
I would fit in if luxury clients. It would
Yep.
be okay to have me there, and I saw a steep decline in engagement.
Mm,
And because I think people can tell that that this isn't you. People can tell
yeah,
you're
energy doesn't
trying
lie.
something else. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
They would have felt the inauthenticity, right? And this is where a
mhm,
lot of people make a mistake with branding is they play dress up as who they think they need to be in order to get to a certain point. And in doing that, they end up becoming disconnected from who they actually are and what's authentic to them. And then that creates a block for the person on the other side to be able to connect with you. And the reality is there's so many people out there who are actually looking for a John to do their photography, who
yeah,
isn't the luxury, who isn't the high end, who isn't the Louis Vuitton, who isn't the yachts. But if you're dressing up and performing as someone that fits those things, then not only are you repelling the people who do want that, but you're also repelling the people who want you for who you are. And so this is the mistake people make is they think they need to play dress up as someone that they're not in order to land clients when really you just need to get clear on who it is that you are, who is aligned with that, and how can you serve them.
mm, yes, yes, 100%, all of
Mm,
that. Yeah, for those who are just like, okay, that sounds great. I would love to like align with who I actually am, but I have no idea who I actually am.
yeah.
Like, it's been too many years of playing dress up and trying to be something else, or looking at someone down the road or someone on Instagram and being like, all right, it's working for them, or at least it
Mm,
appears that it's working for them on social media. So I'm going to try and play dress up like them. How can we like center ourselves and really find who we actually are so that we can build that brand that is more
mm.
authentic?
Yeah, see, I've gone through this many times in my journey, but I actually recently went through this again at the start of this year. So I can definitely speak into what I did in that experience because it really did work for me. I started by muting everyone that I was watching. So all
Mm,
of the other, they might not have even been brand strategists, just anyone that was coaching that I'm connected with, that I was comparing myself to. I muted them all on social media. I stopped consuming their content because what I realized is when I consumed their content, I then knocked myself out of alignment with where I wanted to be going, what I wanted to be doing, because the shoulds came in of, oh, it should look like that, or I
yeah.
should do it like that. So I started by muting everyone. And then once I had muted the noise, I created that space to just focus on me. That's when I started self reflecting. So for me, what that looked like was asking myself the question, what if? What if I could create a different way in how I wanted to build my brand and how I want to show up and who I want to be? And I allowed myself to explore the potential of that what if. Now, I've done a lot of self reflection over the years. So I'm very self aware of who I am, what I like, what I don't like, what makes me unique. And so it was more so about drawing on that information I already had and asking myself, how can I integrate more of this into what I'm doing? So for me, that meant pulling forward my art and looking at that and saying, okay, well, my art is what really makes me unique. So what if I could integrate my art into my brand so that I could lead with that? And so if you're someone who hasn't really done a lot of that self-reflection yet and you're not really too sure on who you are on that foundation level, before you start asking the what ifs, start asking yourself, who actually am I? What do I want? What lights me up? What do I enjoy? For one of my clients, what she realized is she loves walking, she loves being in nature, she loves camping, and she loves hiking. So she brought that through, and now she's designing a brand that allows her to really step deeper into that. So really do that questioning and that journaling or talking out loud, whatever works best for you, but asking yourself those questions of what makes you unique, what are the things that you love doing, what are the things you don't love doing, and if you could really integrate absolutely anything into your brand, what would that look like in the most authentic expression of who you are without needing to question whether or not it's right or wrong?
Yes. Yeah. And for those who are thinking like, I've tried that before, it didn't work. I love what you said about muting people,
Yeah,
because I I don't know. I love getting inspiration from other people, but I'm also just like, "Ooh, that's cool. I wanna do that."
yeah,
And I will, I've seen that with my editing, my photo editing style throughout the years, where I will lean into like, "Ooh, that is really cool," the oversaturated kinda dark silhouettes and stuff. I'm going to do
Hmm.
a bunch of that. Or, oh, yeah, light and airy is kind of cool, and that film look, and I do like these, and I admire this person. That would be fun. I'm gonna do that,
Mm.
and like muting people to where you're not always like just seeing more things and it's like pulling you in different directions because you're
Mm.
interested in them, uh or even asking the question of like, is this something that I just admire?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm like, that is really cool, I do like that, but
Mm.
that's not me. And then kind of moving on from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
There's
I love the muting thing. That's great.
Yeah, well, there's a very fine line between inspiration and comparison.
Yeah.
And so you need to actually check in with yourself when you are viewing what other people are creating and when you're consuming. First of all, check in how much are you consuming and when are you consuming? Like when you go to create or when you go to do anything, does it start with consuming what other people are doing? Because the chances are, if that's happening, you're allowing that to then block what you actually create because you're leaning on that inspiration in order to get any creativity out of yourself. But also checking in, like, what is the feeling that actually is activated in your body when you are observing what other people are doing? And is that coming from a place of like scarcity or is it a place of abundance, right? Is that coming from a place of you're comparing what you're doing to what they're doing and then changing the way that you believe and feel about what you do? Or are you seeing what they're doing, celebrating them, and allowing that to remain detached from what you're doing over in your corner as well? And so
Yeah.
that's why, muting people and pulling back on how much you consume is the best thing that you can do because the reality is you actually already know what you want to be doing. You already know what's intuitively true to you. But the more that you consume other people's content and material and success, you're beginning to doubt yourself unconsciously if it looks different to what it is that you're feeling called to step into.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, for me, I just my brain gets pulled in every
Mhm.
direction if I'm consuming too much.
Yes.
Just like you were saying, where if my, like, consumption to creation is way out of whack,
Mm.
I don't feel inspired, or
Mhm.
feel inspired to do everything,
Yeah.
and just completely lost. So no, I love those tips because it is difficult, especially like I like maybe the last 3 to 5 years I've been really working on who am I, like what do I like, because I realized that most of my life I was just in my mind, I was creating what I thought the expectations that other people wanted from me,
Mm.
and then tried to meet those expectations that I just created in my head,
Yeah.
instead of just being like, I'm going to be me and do what I like. And then the people who also like that or find that entertaining or attractive or whatever, then they will be
Mm.
attracted to that and brought in, and the other people who are not will be repelled. um,
Yeah.
and I think that's a big thing to get to is like doing all of these steps that you just said to really
Mm.
find yourself, find your brand voice, uh,
Mm.
so that you have something strong that you're able to say over and over again, and whenever people think of you they're like, M, this is M,
Yeah.
instead of like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, she likes all these different things, but there's not like something that reminds me of her.
Mm.
Um, where with like a brand voice, what are some, I don't know, some benefits of that, or like why should we have a strong brand voice in our business?
Yeah, so I would say that having a strong brand message is really the biggest thing to focus on first and foremost. The
Mm,
voice would really be something that comes down to like, the delivery of your brand identity. So your brand message, though, is like the core thing that you stand for and what it is that you're really advocating for, what it is that you're promoting, like the core belief that essentially you're carrying within your brand that you want other people to buy into as well. And so it's very, very important that you're crystal clear on what that core message is, so that then that can guide everything else when it comes to the communication, as well as, the design and the identity and all of that. When we talk about your brand voice, we're talking more about like the tone in which you speak within your brand. So that could be like literally speaking, or that could be through the copy that you're writing, the marketing that you're putting out there, whether you're someone who has a very formal tone of voice, or maybe you're more casual. For me, I'm very like a blend of, I guess, smart casual. I like to think of it where it's like, we can be party, we can be fun, but then there's also
Yeah.
this streak of like seriousness, sternness, like, and delivering it how it needs to be delivered. And so that would be the core thing to focus on, is what is your brand message? What is it that you ultimately stand for? Because then that is going to become the central piece of your brand that really drives everything that you create, from your visuals to your graphics to your copy to the content that you're putting out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so great because I feel like a lot of times we like go to social media or we go to write a blog or update the website, and it's just like writer's block. I have no idea
Mm,
what to write and no idea what to caption this photo. Like it was great. I know what it is, but I have no idea like how to tie it into my brand. And
mm,
yeah, having that brand message is something that you can just come back to all the time,
mhm.
and just pull from that. So no, I love that. What are some ways that we can like kind of take those first steps in building that like magnetic marketing for our business?
Well, the first and foremost thing would be to create that brand message. And if you don't have a
Mhm.
brand message yet, you could simply start by saying, I believe, and then what is it that you believe? Right. And so this is going to be in context to your niche. So let's say, for example, like mine within branding is going to be different to what yours would be within the photography space. So I believe what? What do you believe, connecting to your niche? From there, what you want to think about is, who is it that you're actually wanting to speak to? So once you know the message that you're sharing, now it's like, who are we communicating to? Because you need to understand who it is that you're communicating to, because you will need to speak to them in different ways. So if I'm wanting to attract, let's say, for example, women between the ages of 20 and 30, or 20 and 40, for example, I'm then not going to speak in a language or in a tone or to problems that would be calling in men who are between the ages of 20 to 30 or 40,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
it's very, very important that you get crystal clear on the who. And when we get crystal clear on the who, we're looking at demographics. So are they male? Are they female? Is it both? What's their occupation? Where are they in terms of like income levels? Is an important thing that I consider within my niche in particular. Think about psychographics. So, what are things that they enjoy, hobbies? How do they spend their time? What podcasts do they listen to? What shops do they shop at? And so on. And then going deeper into more of the emotional needs of this person. So, what are the desires that they have? What are the pains that they experience? What is the current reality? What's that overall experience that they're looking to have, that transformation that they're looking to have? I'm getting very, very detailed with this. And a great example, coming back to what you said earlier, was when you get clear on your avatar, you start to see, well, am I trying to attract the person who loves to go on hikes
Yeah.
and wears their Doc Martens, and their wedding is probably going to look like it's set in the hinterland on some random farm, and they're wearing cowgirl boots and cowgirl hats, and it's like a barn style wedding? Or is your ideal client the person who's shopping every weekend at designer stores? They're wanting to be on a yacht. They're wanting to have that luxe, that designer experience. Like, when you can separate those two avatars and you can get clear on who is the one that you actually want to serve, then what you actually say in your marketing is going to speak to them in very different ways. Because the way that you would call forward one person will be different to the way that you will call forward that other person who has two different desires and outcomes that they're looking for.
Yeah. So like whenever you're figuring out that avatar and like whittling down to this is where they shop, this is where they spend their time, these are their activities, all those kinds of things. Is there a point where you can get like too narrow, where you're like you're speaking to too few of people because you've like really narrowed it down, um, or is that not really an issue?
See, it depends who you ask, but the way that I see
Okay,
it is like you can't really be too niched because the more niche that you become, the higher your prices tend to skyrocket because you
that's
become
true.
much more
Yeah,
specialized in one area. And if someone's looking for that specific need and you're the only person who delivers to that exact need, then you can charge a lot more premium. So it really depends on, I guess, who you're wanting to target and how you're wanting to target them. Are you wanting to be more of a generalist or are you wanting to be more of a specialist? What kind of pricing do you want to have? Like, what kind of offer is it that you're delivering? But the way that I see it is the more specific that you can be, the more strongly what you're saying is going to resonate with someone, right? And
mm-hmm.
so you could speak to multiple different people through multiple different marketing channels or marketing pieces, right? And speak individually to their specific needs and wants and symptoms and unique positions and still be speaking to many, but you're just doing it individually. Or you could be that person who's like, I am going to be niched into this one specific area. I heard an example once of someone who was like, a fitness coach for vegan women who have had children and are over the age of 40, right? And so that's very, 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 very niche, but their
Yeah.
pricing is also very, very, very high because who they're targeting is so specialized and so specific that it works. So I personally don't see that as a limitation. I see that as a way to be able to connect much more deeply with an individual.
Yeah. Yeah, and even with that example, like
Mm,
they're even though they are speaking to vegan women who've had children over and they're over the age of 40, like there
yeah,
may be some vegan women who've had children and they're in their 30s that
yeah.
still resonate and they're like, "Oh, I can actually this is great and I'm still going to benefit from this."
Mhm,
Or maybe even some vegan guys out there that are just like, "You know what? I have kids too, and this is great. Like
mhm,
I could benefit." So yeah, I can see how that's like even with a very narrow niche of this is who I'm speaking to, you're still kind of getting those like ripples of people who are close to that, but not exactly
mm.
that one
You'll
person.
always, yeah, you'll always attract people who resonate in some capacity. So if you think
Mm,
about it, like you want to speak to that higher level person, knowing that you will probably capture those who are maybe like just below in the category.
yeah,
So if I was to say this from like if I think about my ideal clients, right? Like my higher level client is already doing 6 to 7 figures in their business and they're wanting really intimate branding support when it comes to their brand shoots. And so if I'm speaking to that higher level person, I'm still going to capture the beginner. I'm still going to capture the person who's not yet doing 6 figures because if they have a vision that resonates at that higher level and I'm speaking to that higher level individual, I will still capture those people who are below that. But if I was to reverse it, right, and I was to say, I want to call in these 6 and 7 figure business owners, but I'm only speaking to beginners, I'm
yeah.
not going to resonate with the level above. So you always speak to the level above, know that you're always going to be able to capture 1 to 2 levels below that.
Yeah. Okay, that is really good.
Mhm.
Okay, this has been so good. I love all of this. Are there any like last things that you're like, okay, really want y'all to like take these steps moving forward, or any last I don't know pieces of advice?
Yeah, the biggest thing would be when it comes to your brand, and this is one of the things that people struggle with the most, but I'm just sharing it as a reminder. When it comes to building a brand that is truly magnetic, that truly radiates an essence and an energy that people just can't resist, it really does start by accepting and embracing like who you are authentically. It starts by stopping the performances, stopping trying to be someone that you're not, stopping trying to show up just to appease someone else and starting to show up in true alignment and with true integrity to who it is that you are, what it is that you believe, and what it is that you are here to serve. And so mute the noise that is pulling you away from what you know is your true north. Allow yourself to come back to quiet, to still, to listen to where you're being guided towards with your brand and embrace that because I denied myself embracing that for so long. And the
Mhm.
moment that I truly started leaning into just being authentically me within my brand was the moment that that magnetism really truly kicked in.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned that muting the noise and, like, muting people on social media and, like, also muting the voice in your head that's like,
Mhm.
"No, this is you're this no one's gonna want this," or, "You need to put on the costume of someone else in order to
Mm,
be successful," and muting that because I know that I have those voices in my head often, and that is something that needs to be muted and just being like, okay, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow that I'm attracting these people, but if I keep
mm,
showing up as myself, if I keep embracing who I am and what feels right for me, they will be here. They'll come because again, it's that energy and it's going to attract people with the same kind of energy who's looking for that. So
exactly that.
awesome. Okay, and this has been so good. Before we wrap up and let people know like where they can follow you online and listen to your podcast, all those things, there's something I like to do where we talk about what we're loving this week, and it can be literally anything: book, TV show, movie, whatever. New food. What are you loving this week?
What I'm loving this week is probably just creating space to make more art. I blocked out the entire day yesterday and I just had an art day. I started a new painting, which I'm working on, which is really exciting. And that's probably the biggest thing that I'm loving at the moment.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, I have had. It might be in here. No, it's not within arm's reach. I have had this like tiny little 8 by 10 canvas in this office for 5 months or so,
Yeah.
and with a paintbrush and a little bottle of paint next to it, and I was like, I want to try this thing. I like saw someone painting trees a certain way on TikTok, and I was like, that would be cool. I think I could do that. And I've
Yeah.
always, I'm a photographer. I have artistic creativity and all that, and I used to draw when I was a teenager, and I was like, that would be fun to paint. I've never really painted, and I bought all those things, and then they've just been sitting here. And yeah, through like some of your art videos too, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I need to do this. This is so I'm gonna like set a goal for myself to do that within the next week, to like
Yeah.
set aside some time. Like you said, you set aside all of yesterday to work on
Yeah.
paintings. So yeah, I'm gonna actually put it in a calendar, because whenever it's in a calendar, I will actually do it. Otherwise, I'm just
Yes.
like one day, and then 5 months later, I'm like, I'm gonna do this one day. But yeah,
Oh,
no, it's good inspiration.
I love
Um,
to hear that. That's great. And make sure you do put it in the
yeah,
calendar because if you don't put it in and if you don't make the space, it isn't going to happen. And that was a
exactly.
mistake I made for a long time was I just didn't make the space for it. I didn't schedule it in. I didn't treat, the things that I wanted to be doing the same way that I was treating time for my business. So that's
Mhm.
really great to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole, whenever I have time to do this,
Mm,
it never works out because we tend to fill the time that we have. If we do have extra time, we're like, okay, I'm going to fill it with this thing, or
yeah.
it just gets filled by whatever is around us. So yeah, yeah, setting that designated time. I have to do that for rest too, and just be like,
Mm,
I have to take off an entire afternoon every couple weeks or so just to
mm,
rest. My body needs it, and so does my mind.
mm.
Let's see. I am loving this week. What am I loving this week? There's a few things. It has been quite the week. I am loving a. Let's see. I had something that I wrote down. Oh, a new coffee. Yes, I love coffee, and there's my wife works at the university here in town, and she had a student who is from Colombia, and he had brought back some Colombian coffee,
Wow.
and it's called like La Diche. It is some of the best coffee I've ever had, and he, like, gave that to her, and she was like, "I don't really drink coffee, but my husband does, and I have been enjoying it, so thank you, whoever student this is." Um, but yeah, it's really great. I found them on Instagram too, so I'm gonna see if I can order some and have them ship it. to Texas. But yeah, a new coffee. That's what I'm loving this week.
Oh, I love that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, and where can people find you? Where can they follow along
Mm.
and all the things?
Yeah, I'm super easy to find. The best place to connect with me is on Instagram at Empower with M. Send me a message if you have listened to this episode and you enjoyed it, or if you're curious about how we can work together on your brand and how to bring that to life more. And if you want to listen to my podcast, the Empower with M podcast, then you can check that out on pretty much all the streaming platforms. But you can essentially go back to 22-year-old M who started the podcast and listen to every single milestone across the last, 4 or 5 years of this journey that I've been on. So yeah, if you just want to get to know me more on that level, then the podcast. If you are curious to work with me, then send me a DM on Instagram.
Awesome. Cool. And I will have links to all that in the show notes for everyone. Make it super easy.
Mm.
But yeah, well, Em, thank you so much for being here. This was so great to connect and to talk about this and get inspired to paint again.
Oh, I'm
But yeah,
glad.
thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you for the next podcast episode. Bye, y'all.